Now I'm going to stop it right there. And before you give me the thumbs down, stick with me for 20 seconds and I'll explain something. You and I are being lied to every day by the mainstream media. I'm a tiny YouTube channel. I'm insignificant. But imagine for a second that I was a major TV network. If you saw this on there, you would probably believe it. I don't do clickbait titles, but on this occasion I have, and the reason I'm using this example is to demonstrate something, one of many things, that in recent times you would have seen everywhere. And that is how Sweden, during this whole lockdown, was not locked down. I'm here to set you straight on that. A very good real-life friend of mine and her family that live in Sweden has verified this. Sweden has been in lockdown the entire time, like every other country. Yet on every major TV network and their subsidiaries on YouTube, etc., you've been exposed to the lies that Sweden was experimenting by deliberately not locking down their communities.
Crisis? What crisis? In Sweden, things look almost normal. Crowded cafes, restaurants full, playgrounds and streets too. Sweden's government didn't order a lockdown, preferring a light touch of advising people to socially distance.
I can assure you with verifiable facts that aside from a group of 70 people that in the early days were infected, Sweden has been following the same general lockdown procedures as most countries. Ask yourself another thing too. The journalists, even on 60 Minutes, with regards to Sweden in this example, with so many countries, including our own in Australia, locked down, not being able to travel to other countries, how did they miraculously turn up there? And this is exactly the point I'm demonstrating. I will ask you to look at a link that I'll leave at the end that I did a compilation of a couple of years ago to demonstrate how the media doesn't do their own research. They merely copy, almost word to word, the stories of every other news organisation around the world that are pretty well all linked in one way or another.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream.
You know the rest.
I scream, you scream. You know the rest.
They're all owned by the top few companies that run all the media. That's print media as well. These aren't conspiracy theories, and the short documentary at the end will show you that even Kennedy looked into this.
There are 5 giant multinational corporations who control all 14,000, virtually all 14,000 radio stations in America, all 5,000 television stations, 80% of our newspapers, all of our billboards, and most of the large internet content providers. So there are 5 guys who are deciding what we hear as news and information.
So I want you to judge for yourself, not what you're told, what you're being lied to.
Iraq's continued defiance of the community of nations presents a challenge which must be addressed.
Presents a challenge which must
the member
be
for Grindler.
It is inherently
dangerous to allow a country such as
Iraq to retain weapons of mass destruction, particularly in the light of its past aggressive behaviour.
If the world community fails to disarm Iraq, we fear that other rogue states will be encouraged to believe that they too can have these weapons.
And I've said this before in other videos. With regards to the news, yes, apart from local events, maybe car crash or house fire, you always have to question, is there a hidden agenda or reason behind the stories?
I think it's good, and it's been good.
I feel safe.
Sweden is gambling on allowing a slow spread of the virus and more early deaths to avoid future deadly spikes.
And as for the YouTube version of those stations, or independent YouTube stations, they always use clickbait titles to get you to watch. And when you do watch, you'll find half the time it's totally incorrect. It doesn't match the story. Or they've now spun the story in such a way that it no longer even reflects the truth. You'll find the left-leaning media will edit things. Now, this video is made on zero budget, edited by myself. Imagine I had the budget of a big TV network and the elaborate editing that they have to their avail. I could green screen myself quite easily and quite believably into any countries and say, well, look at this, all around me, it's the way it is, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the truth. I'm not going to hypothesize about agendas.
What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing.
We know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline.
I'm not saying it's common practice, and you may find this hard to believe, but there are such things as crisis actors that are sometimes used, even among the crowd, in extremely big global stories. But that's kind of a parallel topic that we won't get into in this video. I'm bringing you this video not as a big professional presenter, but as a simple YouTuber that tells the truth as I learn it. I know here in Australia we tend to get news stories as hot off the press news stories that are actually up to a week old, sometimes older. This is why I stopped watching TV news years ago now. Very rarely do I see it, and when I do, I just pick so many lies that we're being told. Even here in Australia, we're the only country that has the 1.5 metre social distancing, whereas top experts around the world have all tended to say 3 metres or 10 feet is the accepted minimum. Yet just the other night I saw something on the mainstream TV showing a group of people at something, and they were standing at least 10 feet apart, if not more, 15 probably. Yet our media here said they were all observing the 1.5 metre distancing. Look for yourself. Try and figure out the lies. In my experience, not that I watch it much anyway, but Al Jazeera, of all people, seem to be the most honest. I wanted to get this short message out there. Do not believe everything you see on the TV, especially the news. So always be aware. Just because you see it on TV doesn't mean it's so. I hope I've been able to shed some light onto the matter. Cheers.
We received an order from one of Murdoch's apparatchiks, if you will, that we should cut away from our newscast and start carrying a fawning tribute to Ronald Reagan that was airing at the Republican convention. We were stunned because up until that point we were allowed to do legitimate news, and suddenly we were ordered from the top to carry propaganda, carry Republican right-wing propaganda.
Now we're some health news. You know the old expression, don't worry, be happy?
Don't worry, be happy.
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 Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry.
Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy.